Here's a number that should bother you. In 2026, the median FIRE number for a U.S. household is $1.8 million. That's up from $1.5 million just 4 years ago. A $300,000 increase in the price tag for financial freedom. If you've been following the FIRE movement since its explosion in the late 2010s, you've probably seen the headlines asking whether it's still possible. Whether the math still works. Whether you should even bother trying. The short answer is yes, FIRE is still possible in 2026. But the version that worked in 2017, save 70% of your income, retire at 35, never work again, that version took a hit. The movement grew up. And the numbers prove it. Let's start with the big picture. According to the State of FIRE 2026 report from Torch FI, an estimated 1.2 to 1.5 million US households have now achieved some form of financial independence. That's up about 25% from 2024. The median age of FIRE achievement is now 43, down from 47 in 2020. And the median FIRE number for a household is $1.8 million. That's the portfolio you need, on average, to support a typical FIRE lifestyle. The movement is still growing at about 17 to 20% per year. But the composition is shifting. Tech professionals still make up the largest demographic at about 45%, but healthcare, education, and government workers are the fastest growing segments. The median savings rate at FIRE achievement is 58%, up from 52% in 2022. And the average time to FIRE from a starting point of 0 is 12.4 years. So the movement is alive. But the math undeniably got harder. And the single biggest reason is the safe withdrawal rate debate. The 4% rule comes from William Bengen's 1994 study and the Trinity study that followed. The idea is simple: if you withdraw 4% of your starting portfolio in year 1, then adjust that dollar amount for inflation each year, your money should last at least 30 years. For decades, this was the foundation of every FIRE plan. But here's what changed. Bengen himself updated his research in late 2025 and told CNBC that his current data supports a 4.7% starting rate for a 30-year retirement and about 4.2% for a 50-year retirement. That sounds bullish for FIRE. But Morningstar's 2025 research came to a very different conclusion. Using forward-looking assumptions, Morningstar argued that 3.9% is the highest safe starting rate for a retiree seeking steady inflation-adjusted spending with a 90% success probability over 30 years. That gap matters. If you spend $80,000 a year, a 4.7% withdrawal rate implies a portfolio of about $1.7 million. A 3.9% rate pushes that requirement to about $2.05 million. Same lifestyle, roughly $350,000 more capital needed. For early retirees planning a 40 to 50-year retirement, the consensus has shifted even further. Most researchers now recommend a 3.0 to 3.5% withdrawal rate for long horizons. At 3.25%, every dollar of annual spending requires about $31 of invested assets, not the 25 implied by the 4% rule. Why did the math get harder? 3 main reasons. First, stock valuations. The Shiller-Cape ratio, which measures stock market valuation adjusted for inflation, is near 38 in early 2026. The historical median is between 16 and 17. When you buy into an expensive market, you should expect lower returns over the following decade. Most estimates put expected real returns on U.S. equities at 4 to 5% over the next 10 to 15 years, compared to the 6 to 7% historical average. That directly affects how much you need to save. Second, healthcare costs. This is the single biggest line item that early retirees underestimate. If you retire at 40, you need 25 years of health insurance before Medicare kicks in at 65. The Kaiser Family Foundation reports that marketplace premiums for early retirees now average $600 to $1,200 per month for individuals, before deductibles. That's $7,000 to $14,000 a year just for premiums. Add out-of-pocket costs and the real number is $12,000 to $20,000 annually. If you budgeted $10,000 and the real number is $18,000, that extra $8,000 a year requires an additional $250,000 in your portfolio at a 3.25% withdrawal rate. Third, sequence of returns risk. This is the risk that bad returns happen early in your retirement, when your portfolio is at its largest and you're forced to sell during a downturn. The State of FIRE report found that 28% of FIRE achievers experienced a major market downturn in their first 3 years of retirement. The same average return over 30 years produces wildly different outcomes depending on whether the bad years happen at the start or the end. So what does a realistic FIRE plan look like in 2026? The movement has evolved into several distinct variants, and the smartest approach is to pick the one that fits your actual life. Coast FIRE is the variant gaining the most traction right now. The idea is simple: invest aggressively early in your career until your portfolio is large enough that compound interest alone will grow it to your retirement number by a traditional retirement age, say 65. Then you can coast, work part-time, take a lower-paying but more fulfilling job, or freelance. You just don't need to save anymore. For a 40-year-old who needs $2 million by 65, the Coast FIRE number at a 5% real return is about $590,000. That's a much more achievable target than the full $2 million. Barista FIRE is similar but slightly different. You accumulate a portfolio large enough to cover most of your expenses, then work a part-time job that covers the gap and provides health insurance. The math is more flexible than Coast FIRE because you can pull from your portfolio at a low rate and supplement with part-time wages. And here's the key insight: Barista FIRE is actually more resilient to sequence risk than full FIRE because the earned income specifically reduces your portfolio withdrawals during any bad period. Then there's what the data calls soft FIRE. About 35% of 2025 FIRE achievers plan to continue working in some capacity, consulting, freelance, passion projects, or reduced-hour roles. They have the portfolio to retire fully, but they choose not to. The psychological structure, social connection, and continued income all reduce sequence of returns risk and provide a buffer against lifestyle inflation. The variant that looks weakest in 2026 is Lean FIRE, the ultra-tight version that depends on perfect execution and no bad surprises. Lean FIRE always had a fragility problem. A market drawdown, a health issue, a bad roof, or a healthcare surprise can wreck the math. In a world where the safe withdrawal debate ranges from 3.9 to 4.7%, living on a knife edge is just a bad bet. So here's the practical playbook for anyone pursuing FIRE in 2026. Step 1. Use a 3.25 to 3.5% withdrawal rate for planning, not 4%. If you're targeting a 40 to 50-year retirement, the 4% rule has a 15 to 20% historical failure rate. 3.25% drops that to about 1 to 2%. Step 2. Build a 3 to 5 year cash buffer. This is your sequence of return shield. Keep 1 to 2 years of expenses in cash or money market funds, and 3 to 5 years in short-term bonds or treasury ladders. If the market drops 30% in year 1, you sell 0 stocks at the bottom. You spend from cash and let your equities recover. Step 3. Budget realistically for healthcare. Plan for $12,000 to $18,000 per year before Medicare. Use ACA subsidy modeling to understand how your investment income affects your premium tax credits. Keep your MEGI below 400% of the federal poverty level if you want meaningful subsidies. Step 4. Consider Coast FIRE as a milestone, not a failure. If you reach your Coast FIRE number by 40, you've already won a huge part of the game. You can step off the treadmill, take a job you actually enjoy, and let compound interest do the heavy lifting for the next 25 years. Step 5. Build flexibility into your plan. The research is clear that flexible withdrawal strategies can support starting rates of nearly 6% in some cases, but the trade-off is obvious: your spending has to move with reality. Be willing to cut discretionary spending by 10 to 15% during market downturns. This single adjustment can increase your portfolio survival rate from 85% to over 95%. Here's what I want you to take away from this episode. FIRE in 2026 isn't dead. It's not even close to dead. The movement is growing, the data is getting better, and more people are achieving financial independence than ever before. But the version that promised permanent zero-income retirement at 35 with a razor-thin margin and no healthcare surprises, that version got less forgiving. The core insight of the FIRE movement remains as powerful as it ever was: your savings rate determines your time to financial independence more than any other variable. Save 50% of your income and you can reach financial independence in roughly 17 years regardless of your income level. Save 70% and you compress that to about 8 years. That math hasn't changed. What has changed is the recognition that financial independence and early retirement are not the same thing. Most people don't need to retire early in the absolute sense. They need leverage over bad jobs, bad bosses, and forced overtime. If your portfolio gives you the ability to say no, work part-time, or take a year off without panic, you've already won a huge part of the game. The 2026 version of FIRE is about flexibility, not rigidity. It's about a 3.25% withdrawal rate instead of 4%. It's about Coast FIRE as a milestone and Barista FIRE as a bridge. It's about budgeting $18,000 a year for healthcare instead of pretending it doesn't exist. And it's about remembering that the real goal was never early retirement. It was leverage over your time. And that goal is still very much alive. That's financial literacy, not luck.